Okay, we are continuing our Postgres tutorials, and today we are looking at create database. In our previous video, we talked about structured query language, normally shortened as SQL, which under it we have data definition language, data manipulation language, data control language. All these are used to operate a database. Today we are going to learn how we're going to create database, data tables, and then how to inject data into the database by inserting data into it. So what we're going to do is that every database has a syntax that will come either in the form of data manipulation language or data definition language. So for a Postgres database that we are going to create, this is the syntax. Always it has to have the language create database and then the database name that you want comes. So in this video you see that we have create database and database name, so you put whatever name that you want to put there. So what you do is that, like here, there are two ways of doing it. The first one is we're using the scripts or the command the script to actually write it, or using the graphical user interface to do it. So we're going to try both of them, and then we'll come back to this presentation again. So we're going to open our PostgreSQL database, which is normally operated with open Postgres pgadmin. Yeah, so I open my pgadmin and then it will open up. When it open up, I provide my password that will be used to log in into my Postgres. So now the Postgres login is done. So now I have to go to my database. I'm using Postgres 10, which for these tutorials, I go in there, I expand, I see all the databases that I've been dealing with. And what I'll do is that I'm going to create a new database. One using the graphical user interface and the other using the SQL script. So what to do is that I want to create the first one and call it. So this is the first using the graphical user interface. You right click on databases, you go to create and you click on create database. When you click on it, it gives you a dialog with database where you can provide the name of the database. So for this one we say PG tutorials _1. So what you do, there are other definitions that you go the owner of the database and that's it, but for now we leave everything same as default, and then the other definitions, security and SQL, but for now everything will be default. So we just click OK on it, and you know that that database has been created. Now we have PGT_1. Now we want to also use the other method of creating it. So we click on any of the database and we click on the query tool. When we click on the query tool, we will write database. So now the syntax is create database. And we will do PGT_2. And we put our semicolon at the end, and we go to the query, the toolbar up, and we go and click on the execute icon, and then now the database has been created. When we refresh our databases, we will then see PGT_1 and PG_2 both of them has been, we use the two method, the graphical user and then SQL statement to create it. So now we have our database. Now what we need to do is that we will create tables, but let's go back to our presentation, then we'll come back to it again. So we have used both the um, scripts and then the graphical user interface to define, to create a database. Next, we look at the how to delete a database. So what you do is that if you want to delete a database, it also has its own um, a syntax that you can write to delete. So for to delete a database, what you use that you can use a Postgres script that says that delete database and the database name comes in. So if you drop a database, the database will be removed from the system permanently and all the catalogs that comes with it. So if we say drop database if exist, means that with older versions of pgadmin you might not need this, but the newer version you must to ensure that this statement is in there so that if the database does not exist, it will throw an error. So drop database, then if exist, then you put it there. So we're going to do going to create that command and delete one of the database we created in the process that we did just did right now. So we go to our pgadmin and then we're going to write drop database and then we put pgt underscore 2. Then we need to put if exists. Then you put out this semicolon, you run our query. Now query has been run successfully, so when we go and refresh our databases, you see that the pgt underscore 2 is gone. It means that it's been deleted, and every table or view or function that you have created in that database will be deleted automatically. So the next thing that we will be learning on this is going to do with the tables. So we go back to our presentation, then we look at the table command. So we've drawn the database, then we create table. So when you are creating the table, there's a syntax for creating a table. You do create table, then the table name, and you are supposed to specify the field name, the data type, and if there's any constraint that you want to put on the database, you put it. We're going to create a simple table with it. So syntax is always the field name, the data type, and any constraint there is, and then you have to put it in quotes and then a semicolon at the end. So now you come here, that's the explanation I just gave. And to emphasize it, constraints are always optional, so you can do without it. So now this is a sample of how to create a database in the database where you specify create table, phone book, where phone is one of the columns, and we say that is varchar 32, and then this shouldn't contain any null value when you are inserting any value into it. Your first name, which is 32, varchar 32, last name varchar 32, address varchar 64. So the numbers in the bracket also indicate that this is the number of characters that you're going to put there. Anything that exceeds this, they automatically throw out an error or truncate that data to fit the number of characters you specify in the brackets. So now we will create the database in our database that we've done right now. So now let's go and then create this database in there. So you copy this, and then we'll go onto the pgadmin. You paste this code here, and before we do that, we need to click our database and then open a query to on that database, so that the query that we will create will go into that database. So now we've put a query in there. We create phone book, phone name, first name, last name. So you click execute. So now it has been executed successfully. It means that the table has been created. So now when we click on schemas, we go to public, and then we can see our table. Our tables, you go to tables. When you go to table, you see our phone book has been created with the columns that we specify in there, so you can see it. So that's how tables are created. The other way also is that we can right click on it the graphical way, right click on it, and you say go create, and you say table, then you click on it. It comes table name, let's say student info, and then here you come and specify the columns that will be in there. So here you can just click add, and we specify the name of this, let's say student underscore ID. You are supposed to specify the data type. So here we say big serial, which is auto increment in other database, and we are saying that for now we leave that one. We can add another one and say student name, and we say that one should be varchar, or let's do test for now, and then we say student class student underscore class. By the way, let me give you an advice. Anytime you are dealing with Postgres, try as much as possible to do lowercase for your table names, and for your columns. It helps when you go to you start working with it, make it very easy working with it. So we have done student name, student ID, student name, student class. So now we have it. So what we can do now is that we need to specify our table name. Okay, now our table name is in there, so we put it in there. So data types for these ones should be varchar. So let's do tests for them. Tests, and then tests. Okay, so now we've done this. We can also do varchar for this one too, so that you can see how it looks like. Varchar sharp. Okay, character variety is okay. So the length is 100. So we click on okay. Constraint can also be done when we want to do a primary key on it. You can say add a primary key where the column is student, let's say student info, primary key. So okay, so let's delete this for now. We'll come back to it. So let's create a table. When we create a table and we go in there, we see a student table has been created, and then without any primary key, we'll come back to those things later on. So now what means that we've created two tables, one with a script and then one from the graphical user interface. The next thing that we also look at is probably how to inject data into the database that we've created. So um, now this is how an insert statement looks like, where we have insert into. So we are putting data into the database. So we have insert into phone book, where phone number, so we specify the columns that we created in our phone book table, and then we are indicating the values. So these are the keywords: insert into values, and then what then means is that we can inject data into those columns that have been specified. So we have phone number, which is the first one. We put, because it's a character values, we put them in parentheses here. It should be single quotes, and then we say the first name is John, last name is Doe, and then address is North America. So let's execute this query also and see what happens to our phone book table. So we'll open another query on that same database, and the database by default name shows here, so you are sure you are in that database. You put the query here which says insert into phone book. Columns to be inserted into is phone, first name, last name, and address, and then you can click on execute. So now when we go and open our database, our table, what you do, you want to see what data is in it, you right click on it, or you can write your own SQL statement to select from that table. But the simplest way is to just point it and go to right click on it, and you see the table that you want to open, and then you go to view stroke edit data. You see that I want to open all the records in there, and then the first name, first 100 rows and last 100 rows, and floated rows. The danger with the first one is that if you select all rows and you have almost like 1,000 or 1,000,000 records in it, it will bring all of them. So most times they either use first 100 or last 100, which is safe not to crash your machine. So now we can see that the data we use the SQL statement to insert is already inserted into the database. You can also write other application to insert data into it with the SQL statement that we wrote earlier. So next thing that we're going to look at from this perspective is that okay. So now the query has been done. Now we've been able to create table. We've been able to know how to inject data into the database. That's probably is going to end our tutorial on this. We're going to look at now we've been able to create a table. The next thing is how we're going to write a web service that will be sitting in the middle of our database and our application. So what it means is that all application will talk to that web service, and then our web service will talk to our database to and flow. So basically we're going to do that on PHP, and then we'll come back later on to learn about functions and other things. We want to build it from a basic level so that each and everyone who is using this video understands exactly what it's doing. So for now, this ends our tutorial section on creating database, inserting and creating database, creating tables, and creating and inserting data into it. Thank you.